Right. Well, if I'm good to start when I'm ready, I've been ready for a little while, everyone. So welcome to my session. Hopefully everyone can hear me. I did go in a presentation earlier and it was there's not the right sound. So hopefully you can hear me. So yes, let's get started. Welcome to my session today. So as hopefully you'll be aware, we are talking about CICD with Azure DevOps. Worth shouting out that this session is aimed at beginners to DevOps or Azure DevOps. I hope to give you an understanding of Azure DevOps build and release pipelines, or at least some understanding. And I want to also show you how to integrate version control into your pipelines. Given the time that we've got with this session, because it is a 20-minute session, we're probably not going to do questions during the session. If we've got time at the end, we will obviously do questions. If we can't do questions, I will do a blog post on questions, okay? Also, if this session does whet your appetite, worth giving a shout out to Mike Dial, who has got a session after this where he's going to be going into a lot more detail. And I'm sure it'll be a big improvement on this session. So if you like this one, you're going to love his, no doubt. If this all sounds good, then we're going to continue. If it sounds rubbish, grab yourself a coffee and check out the other great speakers. Let's move on. So the only thing I want to point out here quickly is that the SQL Bits link is the evaluation to this session. I'm happy for you to lie and say it was an amazing session, but regardless of whatever you do, make sure you do fill them in, because SQL Bits are planting trees. I've got a QR link at the end of this presentation, which you can grab this evaluation link from there. Also links to materials, also links to my contact details. Feel free to reach out as much as you like, and I'll try and obviously get you in on this journey to DevOps. So DevOps can mean lots of different things to lots of people. I'm sure many of you have seen slides similar to this before. For me, it's all about empowering your development operations, project management teams to deliver new features, services, and get all that stuff into production frequently and often. I always say in this, and people like wince when I say this, but I always say to companies that we want to fail fast, we want to fail often, but we want to release successfully. If you're failing and you're not bringing down your systems, you're doing something right at least, and you can improve on your failures. So it's all about being confident in your failures. Of course, this doesn't mean that we're just going to deploy our code straight into production. We're not going to throw it over the fence like some of us may be used to. What we do obviously want is promote across environments. So it could be testing environments, UAT environments, and staging environments into production after first having automated tests and quality gates and approvals against all your development. Okay, so this is not I'm writing code, I'm going to execute it on production server scenario. This is about developing quality code into production. There are many different DevOps values, principles, methods, practices, and even tools. At the end of the day, though, your DevOps approach needs to be agile and fit exactly into what you need, okay? You need to be able to adapt your processes easily, and you also need to be able to avoid technology lock-in. So don't be afraid of using technology that you can't necessarily transfer out, but also be aware that you may at some stage move across to something else. So kind of understand what you're doing, document as you go along as well. But fundamental to the whole concept of CI/CD is the use of the code repository, and this gives us versioning on our code. And gives you the ability also to look at what you developed before and potentially even roll back to previous versions if you need to. Hopefully that's all clear though. And be warned, we are doing demos soon, so I won't waffle for too much longer. What exactly is Azure DevOps though? It is an umbrella term for two products, which is Azure DevOps Server and the cloud PaaS-based Azure DevOps Service. All right, so these products really give us a fully integrated set of services in a holistic environment, which contains, as you may see on the screen, wikis, boards, repos, pipelines, test plans, artifacts, and extensions. And through these, you can manage your DevOps project lifecycle, okay? Azure DevOps, though, was derived from the old Team Foundation Server and Visual Studio Team System technologies, so two products I try to avoid. And we need to be aware that Azure DevOps has, despite its relatively newness, on the marketplace. It has a very rich history and mature technology. So what about getting started with this stuff? So anyone can get started with Azure DevOps because it implements a capacity and user-based licensing model, but we do get free but limited service capacity, and there are free basic licenses available. So you get 5 of those that you can use. The basic license provides access to all functionality with exception of test plans, if I remember correctly, and those test plans you would have to pay an additional fee to use. Your Visual Studio subscriber licenses that you may own do give you additional seats to Azure DevOps, but there are some functional nuances which are detailed in some of these links that I provide on the screen. And we also have this thing called a stakeholder license. I always forget whether it's the basic licenses and stakeholder licenses are the same thing or which way around it goes, but the stakeholder license is essentially a limited user license. You can have as many as you want of those, and for me they are close to being useless. They're almost like a read-only type account, but they can come in useful and sometimes. So finally, here it's worth just pointing out that Azure DevOps does support Git and Team Foundation version control projects. Obviously there's only one real choice there, it's Git. And when you create your project as well, which you'll see in a minute, we can define projects using Agile Basic, CMMI, and Scrum work item process methodologies. You can also create your own custom methodologies if you want, but I will let you guys and girls research that yourself. We have to quickly talk about Git. And we won't go into too much detail, but you'll be seeing me use a few commands. But essentially, Git comes along with this concept known as branching, in which we will develop our collaborative code. And branching essentially takes a snapshot of a source branch, and it's a writable snapshot. So we do our changes in there. And then when we're ready, we can then merge this branch into our source branch, or even any other branch you want to, if you want to deploy your code. You'll see an example of that in the demo though. And there are 2 leading strategies which we have on the screen, but the key thing really to call out there is just choose which strategy works for you. Just to flag that when you do your development, you'll almost certainly be working off your own local copy. So we call this the clone. And then when we commit, we want to then push our commits into the source repository, which we call the remote. You'll see that in action shortly. And then also we have this big discussion now, because Microsoft bought GitHub in 2018, and there's ever since been this discussion about whether we use Azure DevOps for all these various things that we've just touched upon, or we use GitHub. Depending on who you ask, you'll get lots of different opinions, because these 2 products do have a lot of overlaps now. GitHub is definitely being adopted by a lot of commercial entities and has a lot of commercial focus. So Microsoft are definitely improving GitHub and building in a lot of the functionality. However, my personal opinion is Azure DevOps is probably our best first steps into DevOps. And it doesn't really have to be a question right now, because you can integrate a lot of GitHub functionality into Azure DevOps. So I'll give you an example there. We can use a GitHub repository and bring that in and do builds from that within Azure DevOps. But each have all of these things that you see in the bottom of the screen. We've got repositories, we've got projects, boards, pipelines, wikis. The interesting thing in terms of GitHub is it comes along with this thing called GitHub Actions, which gives you your pipelines. Now, they're not just dedicated build and release pipelines as DevOps gives us. These pipelines are, these actions give us actual workflow automation. So they are very, very powerful and a lot bigger than what we get in Azure DevOps. So they are definitely something you want to focus on. But keep your eyes on both products. Let's see how they develop in the next 2 to 5 years. And you'll be pleased to hear that that's my rambling over. I've managed to do it in a lot quicker. Well, not a lot quicker. I've done it quicker than I sometimes do. So let's go straight to the demo. If I can find my demo screen. So the first thing I'm going to do, notice in Azure DevOps, we have these things called organizations. I've got a demo one already created. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to, sorry, I've got just need to drag something down there. I'll drag that off screen. Right, so what I'm going to do is create a brand new project. And I'm going to call it, what am I going to call it? Good question. I am going to call it widgets dash project. And I just want to point out this advanced functionality here. This is where you'd select Git or Team Foundation version control and our work item process, but we're just going to keep those defaults. And this is not what we're really talking about now, so we won't go into detail with that. Now, hopefully this project will create very soon. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create ourselves a repository. And notice here, we've already got one for our project. So I'm going to say new repository. And for this one, we want to say widgets dash database. And we'll add a README. Cool. And I'm now going to upload some files into the repository. So this is, actually, no, we don't want it there. My apologies. The first thing we're going to do before we do that is create a development branch. So new branch, development, and this is based on main, as you can see there, create. Before we do drag those files up, I'm going to first set the development branch as the default branch, and I will set the main branch as the compare branch. And then I also want to apply a branch policy to main, just to give you an idea of some of the things we can do there. Yep, good. So I'm going to enforce a policy, say we want a minimum of one reviewer, but I'm going to cheat here and say that I can approve my own changes. You'd never want to do that normally. So let's flick back here. And yep, so I think we're happy with that. And so the next thing we're going to do is go into development, and we're now going to upload those files. Hopefully you can see those files there. So I'm just going to cheat and drag and drop them into the development branch. Commit. And that's cool. So we could, if we want now, create a pull request and merge into production, but we're not going to do that for purposes of the demo.
Mark, if you can zoom in on some of the areas just for the people in the back, if you can zoom, that'll be
okay,
great.
Let me try. Hopefully that's better, Nico. Right. Okay, so what else do we want to do? So I'm going to cheat again because I like doing workarounds, just for purposes of the demo, is we want to create a build and release pipeline. So I'm going to click here and say import pipeline. And I will make sure that all this code will be available probably after Sunday of this week to everyone, but you'll get the link in the QR code. So we'll import this build pipeline, and then we just need to fix it. And up here, so pipeline, what we need is an execution agent. Specify we're going to execute in Azure pipeline, so the cloud capacity, and say we want that Windows 2019. So we've got that set up now. We're going to make sure we've got the right repository source, which you can see is the repository we've just created. We have an agent job, which really you can think of the agent jobs as a collection of tasks, and you can have as many jobs as you want. We don't need to make any changes there. You can see these predefined tasks that we've got. So we've defined a build task for those that you are familiar with this, which will create a DAC pack. Notice here that these special wildcards will essentially look through the repository, and they will just search for the SLN, the solution file, and it will create this build. The next task we've got does a similar thing. It will find that DAC pack that is created, and then it will put this dat pack in this artifact staging directory, and then finally the publish pipeline artifact. You can almost think of the publish as putting this dat pack on the shelf. It's ready to do something with. So that to me looks good. I'm not going to say save and queue. The queue would actually execute the build. I'm just going to say save. And then we're going to cheat again with the release as well. And the strange thing here is, in order to do an import, I have to create a dummy pipeline. Slightly annoying. Save. And
Mark, that's 5 minutes left. 5 minutes.
Cool, no problems. 5 minutes, guys. Let's see if we can do this. So here we go, going to import the release. And we're going to have to fix some of these things as well. So the first thing you have to do, we're going to delete this, the build artifact and put the correct one in there. It's got the wrong ID. And you'll see that there. Actually, before I do that, oh no, I should have renamed the build, but don't worry, we're just going to use that name. Add, cool. The other thing you want to be aware of is the continuous deployment trigger. I didn't show you that in the build, but we have a continuous integration trigger in the build set as well, which will essentially mean that every time we have new code that's committed into the branch, a build will fire. And in terms of this release pipeline, what this means is every time a new artifact is presented to the pipeline, it will instantiate a brand new release. This after stage trigger that we've got set here will say, if we have a new release, start executing this code. If we set that to manual, we'll have a brand new release, but you'll have to manually execute those stages. So we do want that one set. The next thing we have here is we need to fix a few settings here. So we've got the agent pool and spec again. And that's good. One thing I didn't do, but I'm just gonna, oops, what is not, oh yeah, and subscription we need to set there. Authorize. This is where we could get a demo fail if the authorization doesn't work. And whilst we're waiting for that, is I should have told you guys how to set up the key vault that we've got. And so what we want, we'll go into library here for the project. I'm going to say new variable group. I've already got this key vault set up. So I know, call it primary key vault. Primary key vault. Okay. And we're going to link to the key vault. So again, we've got some authorizations going on here. And there's the key vault. Authorize. I had this earlier today where it was complaining. I had to hit a few times, and there we go. And what I'll do is connect a couple of the secrets I've predefined because we're using them in the pipelines, which I'll show you in a second. Okay, so that's that. We need to save it. Flicking back into the release. Okay, so if we go to, we want to save, I think everything's done correctly there. So we'll save this. Oh, and I should have just done this. So within variables, what we do need to do is ensure that we link our new variable group to it. You'll see it up here, link. Okay. And the reason we do this is I didn't point them out, but in here, we've got here we go. We've got these creds that are being used. Okay. So that's that. That's all done. We've got 2 minutes. Let's see if we can do this. All right. So the next thing we want to do is if I go to repos, I'm going to clone this clone this repo, which should default to the dev branch. And I'll just do this now, git clone. Cool, we'll CD into that. Got 1 minute.
1 minute left.
We're gonna do this, Nico, I promise you. So we're just gonna make a quick change. and put a comma there, and we'll get rid of that bit. And so what we're going to do here, we're just going to add a new column to our table. If I've done everything correctly in the pipelines, so we'll do a git add to stage any changes. You see that's modified and it's staged. So we'll do a git push to the remote. And then finally, Nico, what we will want to do, and I hope you will let me do, is if I just do a refresh here, you'll see we've just, oh, why did that not? That should be saying we just updated it now. But anyway, let's create a pull request. We won't worry about that for time reasons. And now what that will do is we've submitted our brand new code. We go through the approval gates and we're going to complete the change. We'll complete the merge now into our main pipeline. I'm hoping if I flick in the build pipeline, you will see that it is automatically kicked off. We won't have time to watch this run through, but what you would see is that extra column be added in our destination server, which I will just show you there. Thank you everyone for joining me. Just let me flick on the slide, Nico, that people can take the QR codes and resources. Thank you everyone for joining me. Please give feedback. Make sure you get in touch.